MAGA is an embarrassment to America. Here's why. Let's discuss the hypocrisy and insanity of the MAGA movement. This is a movement that is aggressively against the cultural elites and the establishment, but yet it is run by the head of the establishment, the President of the United States, who is a coastal elite from New York City, a former Democrat, billionaire, and he is buddy with literally the most elite people in the country, the richest man in the world, and let's talk about that guy. This is a movement that's against immigrants. Let's get immigrants out of this country. And they talk about culture, right? People need to assimilate to our culture, American culture, right? The leader of the movement is married to a woman that has been in America for decades, and she barely speaks any English. And I don't think she has assimilated to our culture at all. I mean, what part of Melania looks American to any of these people?
We must make America great again.
Elon Musk, a former illegal immigrant who thrives on government handouts, a top guy in the MAGA movement, ultra MAGA, let him tell it. It's a movement against the swamp. They want the swamp drained. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is the head of the swamp, and he is infesting our government with the most insane swamp creatures ever. Sexual predators, a bunch of DEI people. Let's talk about the DEI stuff next. This is a movement that's all about DEI and meritocracy and this idea of trying to balance everything out and putting people in positions that they don't qualify for instead of hiring the most qualified people. But Donald Trump's not hiring the most qualified people, not even by a stretch of the imagination. You can play all the games you want about the scandals and say they're not really scandals and it's smear campaigns. Okay, let's eliminate every single scandal from everybody that Trump's appointing. What are you left with? Still a bunch of people that are not qualified for their jobs. They don't have the experience. They don't have the background. In fact, some of their experience directly contradicts their qualifications. So for example, the Defense Department has not been able to pass an audit for such a time. So there's major issues with the Defense Department in terms of spending. Yet he has appointed Defense Secretary, a guy who has also had problems with the finances of organizations that he was managing or a part of. I mean, this is textbook DEI. You hire a guy who has an experience quite similar to the military in terms of major issues with financing, such that he got kicked out, to be in charge of the organization that has those same issues. They also talk about wokeness, right? They see a movie where the main character is a black person or a gay person, and it's kind of like, oh goodness, this is too woke. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, the leader of this movement, does the most woke thing ever at the inauguration. Do you think that he randomly picked that cartoonish, scammer, ridiculous pastor that spoke at the inauguration? Out of all the ministers that he could have chosen, you think it's a coincidence that he picked this guy with brown skin? I mean, not just that he has brown skin, I mean, he's such a wacky guy. Even Trump, if you look at him while the guy was preaching, Trump was looking at him like, this guy's a weirdo. The other guy's looking like he's a weirdo. This is the Black Mermaid and whatever, the stuff that these people supposedly, they're so bothered by this, right? And yet here it is, overtly and cartoonishly in their face. I mean, it's so ridiculous that even the people that are doing this, Trump and his allies, even them couldn't keep a straight face. And yet, not a peep. Again, back to the immigrants. We gotta get these people out of the country, whatever. But yet, we're lining up behind a guy who was an illegal immigrant. We're lining up behind a guy who couldn't find an American woman to marry, yet to bring in some woman from another country who decades later still can't speak the language, still hasn't acclimated to our culture. And on top of that, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are pro-immigration. They want more immigrants to come in and take our jobs. Even this anti-establishment rhetoric is ridiculous because actually think that they're in the middle of some kind of revolution. They are destroying the establishment. But meanwhile, the entire establishment Republican Party is bending over backwards to serve the God King, Donald Trump. These are swamp creatures in the Republican Party that have been in power for so long. Multi-millionaire from all their insider trading, directly responsible for a lot of things that's wrong with this country. These very same people seem very happy to have Donald Trump back in the White House. If this was an actual revolution, they would have all been terrified and they would have done everything to stop him from being president, even if that meant having Kamala, who was definitely an establishment candidate, even having her win. They would rather that because she is more on their side than an anti-establishment threat would be. So the fact that you see all of these 100-year-old Republicans bending over backwards and making excuses for him and voting for whatever he wants, there's candidates that he's selecting that they don't like, but they're going along with it anyway. Clearly, they're not worried about him. So he is no threat to the establishment. At least the establishment thinks so. But yet they think they're part of an anti-establishment movement, a movement with a billionaire, the literal most richest man in the world, who thrives on government handouts. This is your anti-establishment movement? Right. Crickets. The bottom line is the MAGA movement stands for nothing. And I would challenge you to challenge me on that point. Please comment below and let me know one issue that MAGA is actually concerned about and consistent about, something that they really care about. That's not just a tribal or partisan issue. Just one thing. I'll wait.